this, I do at work. I've done it for a number of different federal agencies as part of what I do. Professionally, I'm a business continuity planner by profession, but I have a law enforcement background and worked for the federal government for about 10 years and did a little bit of time as a contractor as well. But I also do it at home. Today is Saturday, so it's my day off too. But this happens to be something that I'm interested in and I'm very passionate about, and I, oddly enough, think about during my free time. So I'm glad that you came. I want it to be very informal, so if at any point you have a question or I'm not clear or you want more information on a topic, don't feel like you have to wait or raise your hand or anything. Just shout out your question, and chances are if you have a question, others do as well. But the caveat to that is not everybody is an extrovert to the extent that I am. So if you have a question that you don't want to ask in front of everybody else, then you have a couple of options. I sometimes have people who want to talk afterwards, and I stay until that's all done and nobody has anything else to hash over. Or I have some business cards, and you're welcome to email me at any time. Should you go home and decide to plan or build a kit for your family, yourself, your loved ones, and a month from now if you have a question, you can email me and I'll get back to you. If you have any kind of community groups or anything like this, such as Bobby set up today for your group, and I've done this in churches, I've done this in people's homes, I've done it in businesses, so things like that, if you have any interest there, then you can follow up with me as well. I'm going to tell a lot of stories today about what I call my little people, and I just say that because they're smaller than me, and that's quite an accomplishment. Most people are not smaller than me. But I have 3 boys at home. They are ages 13. I'm going to try to say 9 because he'll be 9 in a couple of weeks. I might say 8 a couple times, but I'm trying to get used to it. And then I have a 4-year-old. So I have 3 boys, and then I have a 4th boy, which is my husband. And sometimes we're partners, and sometimes I'm his mama. But it just depends on what's going on in the home. I talk about my children not because I think this is only important if you have children, but because that's what's important to me. And this can be a very dry subject. It can also be a very overwhelming and scary subject. So particularly if you're just starting to decide that maybe you want to build a preparedness, cachet for yourself. So what made it personal to me is my children and, the attachment and affection I have for them, the inborn nature I have to want to protect them and care for them. But everybody has that, whether it's just for yourself, and that's natural instinct, and you should have that. Something is maybe off if we don't all want to protect ourselves. But maybe also you might have elder care issues. Many of us are caring for grandparents or parents these days. People are living longer. Healthcare is getting more and more expensive, and we're finding that older loved ones are in our home, and we're our caregivers. So that's certainly important too. If you have anybody in your life who is a person with special needs, if you have anybody with any type of disability or just general medical care, it may make them a little bit different. They may need another level of care. So essentially, or maybe it's a pet. We learned a lot from Katrina about pets and how they interact with us during emergencies. So if that's important to you, then that's what motivates you to plan. But you do have to find what makes it personal for you, what makes it not quite so boring, not quite so scary, but what makes it important. So that's my perspective. I think a lot of people don't prepare because they don't know where to start from. It's very overwhelming if you're at ground zero and maybe you just don't know what can I do first, what is least expensive, what do you maybe already own, and there's just a different way of organizing your home to make those items accessible for an emergency. There's a lot of costs that can get involved with this stuff very quickly, and I don't know about you. I actually don't have an extra form of cash flow that just pumps into my house every week. I have a job, my husband has a job, but we also have daycare, mortgage, and all the stuff that you have. So expensive things that I might want to get and that I would purchase if I had won the $647 million in the lotto are a lot different than what I can do. So sometimes people don't prepare because it's just too much. It's too overwhelming, and I don't think it has to be. So we'll talk as we go through the slides today and about the things that I think you need to do. I'll try to highlight the things that are cheap, quick, and inexpensive, that maybe you can do without much cost, and then we'll talk about some things that are expensive, but I'll give you some alternatives to the most expensive options when I can. We'll also talk a lot about safety and how best to prepare, who to tell, who not to tell, why you might not tell. I think people don't prepare also because they think someone's coming to save them. Some fire, EMS, police, emergency services, things like that. Somebody's going to come, right? Because there's somebody who gets paid every 2 weeks, and it's their job to do those kind of things. And that is true. And I'll tell you that from my perspective, the Johnson family is the #1 most important family on the face of the planet. Falling just short of Wilson, which would be my extended family, and I I love all of them too. But I'm betting that you don't feel that way about the Johnsons. You don't know me from Adam, and you're going to say that your family is most important. And that's true, and you should feel that way. I don't think that Howard County Emergency Services in any way has like a master list, and then I'm at the top of it. I think they'll get to me and they'll help me because that's their job and they take it very seriously, but I think they'll do it when they can. I think there are people whose needs will come before mine. Hopefully, there'll be people whose tragedy is greater than mine, and I'm not the most devastated home on the block. I might be. I hope I don't. But the fact is, they're coming, but do you know when? And can you survive until they get there? And how much responsibility can we take upon ourselves, and should we take upon ourselves, so that they don't have to save everybody? I'm going to say there's not enough emergency workers to go around. My husband and I met when I was in law enforcement. He's still in law enforcement, and I want him to go and save as many people as he can, but at the end of the day, I want him to come back to me, because he's part of that most important Johnson arena. So, those are the reasons why I think people don't prepare and don't plan. And then there's also the notion that it's just not really going to happen to us. I didn't really think that, I don't know if it's obvious, but I wasn't born and raised here. If you can hear it or not, I don't know. I hope you can. I like my accent. I try to keep it. But I was born and raised in Texas, and we have a lot of flash floods. We have a lot of extreme heat. We have all kinds of weather incidents. But I'll tell you what we don't have. We don't have earthquakes. And I didn't think I would get one in Maryland either, right up until I did. And now I know that we have those here too. So we're going to talk about what you're at risk for, and if you guys will flip for me. Let's see. So we're going to talk about risk. One of the important things that you want to know is, what are you at risk for? What do we get in this area? So I mentioned Texas. We have a lot of tornadoes. From a very young age in elementary school, with every quarter we were going around and lining up against the wall and bracing our hands behind our back, and we would just kind of crouch down for a while. And that was how we practiced for a tornado. Because if a tornado came while I was in school, this was what was going to protect me. So if a tornado's on the way, I still sort of feel that urge, and we'll talk about muscle memory and things like that later. But you want to know your risk, because you're going to do different things in different events. If we're having flooding, then you want to go to an upper floor of your home. If you're having a tornado come and you happen to have a basement, which a lot of people do around here, we didn't have those in Texas, but then you want to go to the lower level. So know what you're at risk for, and we won't cover that today because we don't have time to get into all of that. But what you want to do is go home, look up the websites, and there's on the very last slide in the deck will be websites for references. But you want to go to your FEMA websites. You want to go to ready.gov. You want to look at the American Red Cross websites. You want to look at the CDC websites for health issues. And you want to be aware of what you're at risk at. And you want to know what you and your family should do during each of those events, because it may be a little bit different. You may need different supplies. You may need to be in a different part of your home. But you definitely want to know what specific trigger areas, such as snow. Certainly didn't get any snow where I was. I thought we had snow in Texas until I lived up here, and it turns out you guys have snow. And Texas has what we call sleet, and when there's an inch of it on the ground, we all pretend it's snow, and snow, the school closes for a week and everything. So snow up here freaks me out. I hate it. My 4-year-old takes after me. If you take him out in the snow, he just kind of does this for a while, and then he gets really angry and says, "Take me back in the house." And so he takes after his mother. I hate the snow. When we had, 6 feet of snow, I thought I was going to die. My husband and children fall out and act like Jesus is on his way to get them when it gets really hot up here, because he believes it's extreme heat. I'm going to tell him it's not nearly as hot as it would be if my prayers were answered and I got to move home. But we respond differently. So know what you're at risk for, and what would you do during those disasters. So what can we do? Coming today, so you're listening to this, hopefully you'll take some things to heart, even if it's just a few tips. Hopefully you'll find yourself at home assessing what you already own. You can go through the process of saying, what would I like to own if I were going to make some purchases for preparedness? And then you can rank order those according to what's most important, what would save you, what would make the most difference if you had it in the event. We talked about generators briefly. We'll talk about it more in a minute. Or you have to break it up by what can you afford. And I certainly understand that. So, how much can you set aside? We don't have a lot of extra cash lying around our house, that's for sure. But how much can we set aside? Can we use our income tax return? God help you if it's a year you don't have to pay. And you get a little bit back. Maybe you can put that towards it. But you want to know what you're at risk for. You want to make a plan. We're going to talk about evacuation plans and communication plans. We're going to talk about kits and how you can make a kit and what you need to put in a kit. I brought my kit today as an example. This is just my go kit. We'll talk about it in detail in a little bit. And then most importantly, practice. Now, I mentioned a phrase earlier, muscle memory. They may use this term in the military, I'm not sure. It's certainly something that you hear in law enforcement academies, muscle memory. So when you're in a law enforcement academy situation, you're going through scenarios and you're role-playing, and the actors come out and you're doing this stuff, it's because they want to put you in situations that raise your adrenaline so that you can practice being able to respond in those situations accordingly with that adrenaline flowing. And I want you to think of the same type of circumstances with these emergencies. So I want you to, if you can't practice for whatever reason, but I think you should do that at least quarterly, and we like to do that in our home, you want to practice actually what would you do. I had to run out of the house and I was in this home, I'm in this room because it's 2 a.m. and I'm sleeping. And you have your kid. Who's going to take the kid? If you have little people or elder care issues, who's going to be responsible for ushering those people out of the home? Where are you going to go when you get out of the home? That kind of stuff. But that level of practice is what you want to do, because what you want to train your body to have is an instinct for that moment. If there's smoke in your home because there's a fire and your adrenaline is up here and your panic is way past whatever you've experienced in your life before, you want to know that your body knows what to do and how to respond, because it may be the middle of the night, you may be overcome by smoke, you may not be thinking clearly. I can promise you won't be if it's very stressful. And so if you're injured, can you think clearly through that amount of pain? It might not be that some sort of shock has set in and you don't feel anything. You may feel all of that and you have to push through that. So you want to practice, practice, practice. We practice as much as we can. Occasionally my husband gets very benevolent and decides to cook dinner for the family, and that usually comes with some small fire or smoke event. And it's okay to laugh, by the way, because I like to laugh. I spend as much time in my world as I can laughing. It makes me feel better when things are not right. So feel free to laugh. It is funny when my husband cooks because he does his best, and bless his heart, over the little bit of 10 years that we've been together, so things have gotten better, but occasionally we still have that little bit of smoke incident, there's a little fire in the home. So the last time that my husband decided to make dinner and the smoke alarm went off, which is a normal occurrence, I try to use real world situations as much as I can, and we still use that as a plan to evacuate. So while he deals with the chicken or beef or whatever it is that's not going so well, I take the kids and run them out. So the last time it happened, my 4-year-old, who was dressed in full-blown combination Batman, Captain America regalia. And if you haven't seen a 4-year-old in full-blown combination Batman, Captain America regalia, you should see that. It's fun. So he's standing at the front door. He's wearing his plastic Batman mask with the ears. He's also wearing his skull cap with Captain America ears. And it goes off. Now, my 4-year-old doesn't like loud noises at all. He doesn't respond well to them. And the smoke alarm, as we all know, is loud and it's scary. So he's standing by the front door. If he were to turn around, he could touch it. And we've practiced many, many times. So all I want him to do is turn around, open the door, and go outside. And instead, he drops down a little bit, puts his arms out, and just begins to scream and fall. And so what I knew instantaneously was that I had a 4-year-old who was not going to do well. Right? So it doesn't matter how many times. It doesn't matter how many times we practiced that so far, despite his 4 years and however many times I practiced that with him, the noise overpowers his muscle memory of what he ought to do, because that's just too scary. And so that's not good. It's not what I would want, but because we had that practice moment, and thankfully Chris was kind enough to burn dinner, then I learned a lesson. What is my son, my youngest son, going to do when he hears the smoke detector go off? Even if he's wide awake and he's dressed in his "you can't beat me" regalia, he's going to freeze. So if you factor in that it might be the middle of the night and he's in his bed in the room with the door shut and all the lights are off and it's smoky, do I believe that he's going to get out of the house? I don't. So I know that I need to do that. I have to still, even though he's 4, at this moment, be sure and take care of him. And I learned that through practice. So you can't practice enough. And we'll talk a little bit more about it as we move on. So during disaster, you want to remain calm, and that seems kind of ridiculous, but I think what you're doing by preparing helps you remain calm. If you know that you're prepared when Hurricane Sandy is on her way, then you're not one of the frenzied people that has to run to Food Lion to fight your neighbor over the last remaining pack of chicken breast. And ladies, then you end up with a pack of thighs, and because you don't normally cook chicken thighs, you don't even know what you're going to do with them. But you take them home because you want to be able to eat. So there's a lot of different things you can get into, and you don't want to be the lady or the man at Walmart fighting over a case of water. So I think if you take these steps, no matter what you can afford, what you may be able to do, everything you do puts you in the right position to be prepared. So every little bit of progress you make, you're more apt to be able to remain calm. And that's going to help us. That's going to help emergency services. Render aid where you can and where it's appropriate. I have a whole slide later about safety skills, and I'll talk to you more about it, but I can't stress enough when you can and when it's appropriate. And we'll talk about it again. Follow the instructions of emergency officials. The thing that you have to realize about law enforcement, emergency services, firefighters is, these people, before they go on shift, they have a briefing. They get an in-briefing. They have a roll call where, either their watch commander or whatever may be, however their department handles it, gives them an in-brief for the day. What's our top priorities for today? What are our hazards for today? Do we have anything on tap for today that you need to be aware of for the shift? My point is they're getting information at an earlier point than you might be because, KLTV might not have released this yet. They might not even know. But that gentleman in uniform knows things that you haven't gotten yet. So be respectful of their position, be respectful of their direction, and follow it. So if the man tells you not to go down this road because it's flooded, but you happen to own a Hummer and you just really feel like it can take it, don't do that. Don't disrespect their knowledge and their standing in the community and their authority by saying, I can do it anyway. Because when you get stuck, or if you start to drown, they're also the person that has to set aside taking care of the rest of us to go rescue you. So take that into account with law enforcement. And then again, know the specific guidance. If you haven't looked at what's important for in our area and thought about each of them uniquely, I'm going to say you'd be disadvantaged in the moment. So look at your hazards. So let's talk about building an emergency plan. So this is a personal plan, and I'm certainly working for the government. There are rules that they have to have what we call occupant emergency plans, and in another life I build those for federal agencies as well. But what these are how you're going to evacuate the building, what if you can't evacuate, what if we have to do what we call shelter in place, what are the provisions for our personnel during that event. But you want to have the same kind of plan for yourself. And I want you to take a second and think about where you spend most of your time. I feel like I spend all of my waking time at work. I don't mind admitting that. It doesn't make me happy. When I win the lottery, I'm not going to be one of those crazy people that continues to work. I'm going to quit the very next day. So, but right now, I spend what seems like an egregious amount of time at work. So I want to have all these thoughts and plans for myself while I'm at work. I don't commute anymore. Thankfully, my commute got cut, and I've moved to a closer agency. Thank you. Appreciate that. But I used to commute to D.C. for about 8 years. I commuted to D.C. every day. At one point from as far as Fredericksburg, Virginia. That was eye-opening. Don't do that if you don't want to. But I spent an inordinate amount of time in my car because I was commuting. So I would want to have a plan for my vehicle as well. If you spend a great amount of time at a relative's house or a church or some sort of civic event that you normally attend, but think about where you spend the majority of your time. And when you leave here today, consider building as much as you can of a plan for each of those areas of your life. Because one might not necessarily cover the other, particularly when we're talking about kids. So think about where you spend your time, and we'll talk about what we put in the plan. Now first, escape and evacuation routes. I want you to think about this from your home, and I'm going to talk about a lot from home, but keep it in the back of your mind that if you do work outside the home, that you want to have these types of thoughts about your work environment as well. So you want to have multiple evacuation routes. These go kits that if you spend the time, and Lord help us with money building, then you want to have them where they're useful. Please don't keep this in your garage. This is not the most attractive little piece of luggage. This isn't like a Vera Bradley or some lovely 31 bags or something you picked up at like Costco or Sam's or what have you. So I know it's not really pretty. It certainly doesn't match my decor, but I can tell you that this lives by my front door. Now that does mean that occasionally it becomes a coat rack. Thank you, husband. Or a G.I. Joe rack. Thank you, all 3 children. We store everything in the world that I don't want anything to touch it. I want it to be like sacrosanct, where everybody may just walk by and angels sing because they're no magic kid. It finds shoes, coats, hats, balls, bags, everything on top of it. I try to keep it clean and debris-free so that we can just grab it and go. There are 5 of us in my family, so it's exceptionally heavy. It's a bigger bag than I would like, but occasionally I go and say, well, I think I can get rid of this, or maybe we'll pare down this. But I'm constantly trying to keep it inventory. But I don't keep it in the garage. Now, occasionally, if I've had a particularly rough week with my husband, I may decide to move it into the garage. So if we were to have a fire, I have to send it deeper into the home before you can escape. But that's a personal call. You don't have to do that. But I'm going to say it's safest by your front door, your back door, wherever you're going to evacuate from. If you're at work, you should have a kit too to keep it where you can go. And I'll talk more about ladies and purses and things like that. Now let's talk about upper floors and basements. Around here, most of us, the cost of living, don't live on 50 acres of land, right? If you do, I'm extremely jealous. I like you a lot. You're my new best friend. I grew up on 50 acres of land, and some someday I'd like to move back there. But right now I live in a very close community. So close that all the streets are one way. We didn't even build streets wide enough for 2 cars. Every street is one way. I wouldn't make that choice anymore. But anyway, my neighbor's home is about 17 inches from mine. I believe, truthfully, I could lean out one window and reach into his and borrow a cup of sugar. So it's not ideal. I wouldn't choose it, but it is my circumstance. I don't have a rancher, which is what we build in Texas. Homes go out, not up. But here we build up. So how many of you have a bedroom on the upper floor of your home? Right? Me too. We're all up there, truth be told. So how are we going to get down? Most of us also don't live in some sort of palatial mansion. Again, if you do, congratulations, and I'm jealous. We just have the one stairway. I don't have like a secret one. And that's good because, you know, I'm coming up on having a teenager and I don't want many egress routes from my home. So how do you get out if that stairwell is on fire and you can't get down but to go through the fire? Are you going to open the windows and tell your kids to tuck and roll and just pitch them out the window? We have rose bushes. I hate them. I can't make them die. I don't know how to. If you know how to kill roses, let me know. Or if you want to come dig mine up, let me know. But anyway, so I wouldn't choose to throw my children out the window. What do? So they make emergency escape ladders that you can buy. These are $100 or less. If you were to go to your search engine on the interweb and put in emergency escape ladder, you would find many, many different choices. You need to check though, because on almost every brand there will be a caveat in very small print, like you find with all of your infomercials, that says one-time use only. And what did we say earlier that I really want you to do more than anything? Practice. And if you can only use it one time and it costs you $75, I can tell you we're not going to do that at the Johnson household. So I'm going to buy the only one. I found one brand and now I'm slipping my mind. Do you remember, Bobby? I don't. If you want to know the brand, email me. I have it at the house and I will email you back. But there's a brand that you can buy and they don't have that caveat and we practice with it. So what it does is it hooks to your frame, your window frame, and it's rope and ladder, and it just falls down and you climb down. Now that also needs practice, okay? So will my 13-year-old be able to just transverse this? Yes, he could. But I'm going to tell you, he probably wouldn't. He'd just stand there and be like, I'm not doing that. My 8-year-old will stand at the window, almost 9 years old, and he'll stand and he'll make a list to himself and he'll say, if I go, these are the pros and cons. If I stay, these are the pros and cons. Over the years, my mother has told me this, my father has told me this, I've seen this on cartoons. And then he's going to think about it, and then sometime later, if he's not burnt to a post toasting, he will make a decision. And depending on his mood, it could go either way. My 4-year-old will throw the ladder down and say, I'd rather jump. And then he will. So, you know, practice, so I know how they feel, but the truth is, that's a lot. Now, if you have a baby in the home, if you have someone with mobility issues, again, can they do this? Have you practiced? If you have a baby, can you do it? Can you hold a child and climb down a ladder at one time while there's a fire burning in the home and you're trembling and you're doing this, you're sweating and you're nervous and you're scared? Right? So, think about it, practice it. Also, pay attention when you buy the ladders because they're for like 2-story, 3-story, but if you have vaulted ceilings in your first floor and you may only have a 2-story home, you don't have a standard ceiling, you may only get the 3rd story. So just keep all that in mind. Let's see, what else? So, the basement. What if you have, how many of you have a bedroom in the basement? Does anybody have a bedroom in the basement? We have a bedroom in the basement. It's like a little apartment down there. It has its own kitchen, bathroom, and all of that. But there's no egress, meaning you cannot leave the basement but to use the stairway into the main home. There's no door. There is no window. There's a window, but it's like a portable. I could push the cat out of it if I felt so inclined. Sometimes I do. But, in a fire, I'm going to say I'm not going to go down there and shove rodeo out the window. But I'm not even fitting through this window. My 4-year-old's not fitting through it. So if they sleep down there, that's bad. I'm going to tell you this bedroom is not used regularly to sleep in. But if your home is configured and it's just your circumstance, and Tim mentioned that, we try to make it fit for everybody. So if your planning says I have to plan for that, then let's talk about what you can do. I would say don't make that a bedroom for someone to sleep in unless you have to. And if you have to, consider something such as a fire blanket. A fire blanket was not meant for this, by the way, okay? Those are meant to smother a fire. They keep them in kitchens, industrial kitchens, things like that. But if you had to run through a burning staircase because it's that or burn, it will give you some sort of protection. It is meant to retard flames somewhat. Now, I'm going to tell you that if you're going to do that and you have little people sleeping down there, right? You have your children down there, then pay attention, because if you have a 3-foot child and you bought a 5-foot by 5-foot wide blanket, she's going to trip all the way up the stairs. You made that worse. But it is something that can mitigate it, and that's all we're looking to do. But I would say don't make it better if you don't have to. Let's talk a little bit really quickly about smoke detectors. If you have anyone with maybe a cognitive issue, or if you have children, they now make smoke detectors that you can record your voice on. So what does this squelching beep do to my 4-year-old? It makes him freeze. He's terrified of that sound. But he's also terrified of me when I yell. Not really, but I wish he was. So if everything was perfect in the world, then my scream would make him actually react like that. But they've done studies, and in a lot of cases, and if you Google it, you'll find a video of a child sleeping with a smoke detector. And for a parent, that's terrifying. If you have grandchildren, recommend this to your children for them on their behalf. But they're not very expensive anymore. They used to be. Now, say they're $100 or less. But you can record yourself, so I could get on there and say, Turner, get up, Turner, there's a fire, get out of the house. Meet me at the clubhouse. That's our plan. But you can record whatever you want on these, and I mean, that is a wonderful invention for parents. And if you have anybody with cognitive issues or someone with that being is just not going to do it. So, what else? When you get out of the house, where is it that you're going to go? Okay, if you have an active gas line or things such as that, or if it's a very large area that's affected in your community, you want to move off from the home. But again, you want to have pre-coordinated this. Where are we going to go? We have a community center in our home. It's about a block away. The kids know where it is because that's where the pool is. So we've taught them to go to the front of the community center and wait there at the door. Now the good news is the front door of that aligns perfectly with the main thoroughfare of the community, and we live in a gated community. And there's a guard there 24/7, 365 days a year. And we've told them, if you're there too long, if you don't see Mama and Daddy. Now you can't just say 15 minutes because it's full. You know what 15 minutes means. 13-year-old maybe, but what if he's not there? So you have to discuss with them, what would it mean? What do you feel? If you feel uncomfortable and scared, then you can go to our secondary site, which is that guard shack. So we tell them to move up where the officer is at the front of the community, knock on the door and say, I need help. And we've talked to them about that. So you want to have some places that you're going to relocate to. Again, and you should be practicing this at work. If you work somewhere and they don't have regular fire evacuation, you need to find your safe and your health and safety officer, plus you can ask them, what is our evacuation plan? Where am I supposed to go? What am I supposed to do? What is the plan? So think about that at work as well. So also, and ladies, I can pick on them. I'm in the club, but we're very bad about directions and stuff, right? So where I work is literally a rat maze. I occasionally feel like I need a bag of breadcrumbs. I've been there long enough, I'm starting to figure it out, but at first it was terrible. So maybe work in a very small building and it's not a big deal, but know how to get out of the building by multiple routes. It's no different than when you go to a hotel. When you go to a hotel, please tell me you're not just checking in your room and saying, hey, look at my temporary bedroom. Hopefully you're not doing that. When you get to a hotel, what do? You get your room, great, my key works, I'm in, good, let me set my bags down, restroom break or whatever. But take a moment and go find the escape, the stairwell. Where's the closest stairwell? We need to look for that. Find the alternate. Don't just find one. Make sure there's nothing in front of it. Make sure, somebody from housekeeping hasn't rolled a rollaway bed in front of it and it's no longer accessible. Make sure that door opens and works the way you expect it to. So that when it's smoky, if you need to get out of that room and you're crawling, you know which way to go. They always put the escape lights, they say exit in red, most often red, sometimes green. The top. Well, where does smoke go in a fire? Up. I spent an enormous amount of time begging one of my federal agencies for a $500 roll of reflective tape. And I wanted to put it at the bottom of all the doors along the stairwells for every floor. And we only had 11 floors. And it wasn't that big of a building. We had 2 stairwells, one on each end. Right? Not that many doors. Couldn't get $500 to do that.
It is normal.
It's normal, right?
For the government, yes.
That made a whole lot of sense. But I wanted that because if you're crawling, and they teach us that since we're little kids, that you get down, if you can wet something to put over your mouth to help you breathe, to cut down on the intake of that smoke and save your lungs, and save your oxygen intake, and you get down. But there's no light down here, so you need to know where you're going. If you're checking into a hotel, by the way, try to stay on the 6th floor or below. Most large metropolitan fire departments, their fire ladders to come and get you stop at about the 6th floor, give or take. So try to stay on the 6th floor or below. Okay? The penthouse looks pretty, but I don't stay up there. Which is cool because we can't really afford the suites anyway. I just tell people it's because it's not safe up there. Truth is, that's not our budget. So let's talk about communications. Tim mentioned when we started that communications, he sees in the community is one of the it's true. So, how many of you remember from 9/11 or even after the earthquake that it was very difficult to get a cell phone call through? You couldn't make any cell phone calls, right? So my husband, who still has to commute to DC, and sometimes we have a little bit, we're very similar, so we butt heads more often than not, and we tease one another a lot too. Like I said, I like to laugh. So when the earthquake happened, my number one goal was to get through to my husband so that I could rub it in that I will be home in 20 minutes because now I work in Maryland where I live, and he'd be home in like 3 days. Because I knew he was never getting home from DC, and I thought this was a good opportunity to rub in my good fortune. But I couldn't get to him. It was very frustrating for me. I never got to make my joke, and once it wasn't applicable, it wasn't as funny. But we know that if you make landline calls, now this is copper, okay? If you have Verizon Fios, you're not really making a landline, okay? If you have Vonage or things like that, and you're using the internet, it's not really a landline. Landline calls will work better. And we also know that if you're calling out of state, it works better. So my entire family is either in the great, pardon my bias, but the great and wonderful state of Texas, or they're in their neighbor in Louisiana. So I can call my mama in Texas and say, Mama, this is where I am. I've made it out of work. I have smallest. If you hear from Chris, tell him he needs to get medium and large, right? And vice versa. He can call my mom and say, Pam, I've got Jimmy. Does she have Ryan? Do you know where to turn Chris? I can't get my mother-in-law in Saturday because it's overcrowded. But out-of-state seems to work better. And that was a lesson learned from 9/11. Now, on the last slide of the deck, I'm going to give you some resources in case you don't have any, friends or family in the great state of Texas or any other state. I'm sure also wonderful. But if you don't have a person out of home, because maybe all your family lives in the area and you don't have that resource, I'm going to give you some websites and some 800 numbers where you can sign up for some services. And those are also born out of Katrina. So, yes, sir.
I just want to touch on the communications. When the earthquake hit, Angie, it's my wife, Angie, by the way, we were driving from here to my office in Laurel, and then the earthquake occurred while we were driving in the van, so we didn't feel it. But I saw all these people just pouring out of the buildings. I'm like, what is this, a flash mob? Everybody's going to fly. I'm like, what's going on? I get to my building, all these people are like, what's going on? He goes, there was an earthquake. I go, what? I didn't notice. I was driving the whole way. But my phone worked, and what I figured out forensically was the reason my phone worked, the smartphones and iPhones, you set them up for Wi-Fi, and we're a Wi-Fi access point. When I got near my office building, I was able to make and receive calls and do text, but all the cell phone towers' bandwidth was just sucked up because the earthquake shook such a huge human biomass. It was the largest population center in the country that got shook up, so everybody was calling at the same second, and that just boom. There's just no way to make a cell phone.
And texts go through much better as well. If you can text. Now, my mother-in-law, and God love her, actually I do love her, she's wonderful. I've had a couple of mother-in-laws, but she's the best so far. And she doesn't text. So, one, it's just more convenient for me if I happen to have 3 children climbing me at one time while making dinner and dealing with rodeo, and sometimes what we call fourth child. Then, text is easier. She doesn't text, and I would really like for her to do that. Even if she signs up for the kind where you get charged $0.25 every single text, and she tells people, I'll shoot you if you text me because it's expensive. But have the capability. Convince those you care about, have the capability on your phone because text will go through a lot better than the phone calls. So those seem to work, and the Wi-Fi is an option. And really quick, also, if you have Fios, and I can't speak to the other ones, but when you lose your electricity, you have an 8-hour emergency battery on your Fios box. So you will still have a phone for approximately 8 hours through the Fios box. It has a backup emergency battery, whether you know it or not, it's there. So anyway, check into that. You need to carry an emergency contact card in your wallet. Ladies, this is also a beautiful way to, inventory your husband's wallet on an occasional basis. So if you have need to go into the wallet. I'm just kidding. But you do need to have an emergency contact card in your wallet. Now, gentlemen, you traditionally carry your wallet on you at all times. Let's talk about purses, ladies. So your purse you don't necessarily carry with you at all times, which is to say if you're at work, you might go down the hall and to the restroom or to a meeting or what have you, maybe down for lunch, and you just take your wallet but not your keys or your cell phone or whatever. And I'm going to say that you ought to take your purse with you wherever you go the same way that a man would take his wallet. And most of us are, I'm precluded from holding wallets anywhere in this suit because there are no pockets. So I'm just crafty enough to glue a pocket on here, but I feel like that might blow my image. So I don't have any pockets. I'm just going to carry my purse. And I carry it with me no matter where I'm going to go. My husband calls it my diaper bag because it's huge, but I'm a preparedness person, so I have to have all my stuff. And I took the train for 10 years where you might get stranded on the way home from DC for 2.5 hours and you need your stuff. But take your stuff with you, and in that stuff, have a contact card. And what do you put on it? You want to put your name, obviously. Don't put your social security number. When you get rescued by EMS right away, they don't need your social security number, but, you know, whoever hijacks your wallet might want that. So I would put that. Put your insurance information. God knows I want EMS to know that I have paid my ridiculous Blue Cross Blue Shield premiums. I'm sorry if you work for Blue Cross Blue Shield, that you kill myself. And I want them to get billed for their 5%, and then I'm sure I'll pick up the 95% that I always pay anyway. But put on there if you have any particular medical conditions, if you're doing this for children or a loved one, you're completing it for them. I made one for everyone in my family. I did put one in my husband's wallet. Put down any pertinent medications. Now, I don't care if you take a multivitamin. I mean, that's good. You should. But it doesn't matter to me in an emergency medical situation to know that you took a multivitamin. But if you take diabetes medication, if you take heart medication, if you take nitroglycerin, things such as that, I want to know. I want to know that you take it. I want to know how much you take, and I want to know when you take it. Because if you take it once a day and it's been, 22 hours since you had it, that's important. If you had it an hour ago, that's also important because you don't need a dose. And what if you can't communicate at the time? Put your emergency contact person. I also have my location sites. I have on there the address of the clubhouse where we meet. We have a tertiary site, which is an off-site little, shopette that you could walk to from our home. You wouldn't, but you could. So also, if things are really bad and our community in its entirety is non-accessible, my family knows to go there. My husband knows to go there. I put that on there. So if they're looking for my loved ones, phone lines are jammed, they can't get through, they might find my husband there. If you decide to use one of the 800 numbers or the websites to register yourself, put that on there so they'll know. Listen, my family's going to be looking for me on this website. Maybe if someone gets time, they'll register. We found this person. So, also, I laminated mine, but that's because I'm not a swimmer. We have a water event. I'm going to die. And when they find my corpse, I want them to spend whatever is required of my life insurance policy to send my corpse to Texas. Do not bury me in the state of Maryland. I will haunt each and every person involved. So, vital records. Let's talk about what vital records are. Now, vital records is a business continuity term that we've used for years. And in business continuity, it's all those pieces of information that allow you to be able to do your job. A vital record at home are all the pieces of information that make you, you. So it's your bank account. God love us, we all have to have that. It's your passport, it's your insurance card, it's your credit card, it's your driver's license. It's all the things that you have to amass to go down to the DMV and get anybody to give you any service. Also start your work. But let's face it, you don't want to go there and not have your proper documentation. These are things that if you lost, it would be hell to pay to get them reconstituted into your world. You don't ever want to have to go in and say, oh, I lost my driver's license, can we start from scratch? That would be a nightmare. I might give up on life if that happened. I'm sure there's a way around it, but it would be unpleasant. So if your home were burned to the ground, what kind of records would you want to remake your life? First of all, you want a copy of your life insurance policy. Okay, because Nationwide is on your side. But if 4 houses burn and you're the one with all your documentation, I'm going to say you're the winner chicken dinner, that anything. And you're going to get serviced first. I also got a suggestion one time from an audience member that I thought was great. And think about Katrina. People were displaced from their homes, sometimes forever. They left New Orleans and never went back. Or they left New Orleans and it was gone for 3, 5, 6 months. There were people living in FEMA trailers for 2 years. And so, you want to make sure that you have a copy of your resume. Because if you got relocated to the extent that you have to reconstitute and rebuild your life somewhere else, and you're in the Astrodome with 300 other people, I think it's more like 3,000 other people. Assuming that you're not being assaulted and you're in line because you want to get a job in that area, because again, we all work because we have to. Well, most of us work because we have to. Then you might want to get another job. A copy of your resume would be nice. Somebody suggested a copy of your address book, because if we're in a situation where electricity is a problem and you don't have a way to recharge your cell phone, and let's face it, we no longer memorize anybody's phone number ever, because we get it from our cell phone, right? And we don't write.
I know it's my mom's.
Exactly. So
And the only reason I know that is it's the same number as when I was there.
Oh, well, there you go. So you've known that your whole life.
Yeah.
That's pretty convenient. That was
But
nice.
I don't know her cell phone number.
Exactly. And, if my phone has been dead before, I'm like, I really need to call. And I don't even remember the circumstance. I just remember a time where I really need to get in touch with my dad. And, I had the first 3 down because they were it was the same exchanges when I was growing up. But who knew what the last 4 were? So, a copy of maybe your address book, which most of us don't even keep anymore. We have electronic records. Now, somebody did suggest one time, too. I have photocopies of all of my documents. They're in a waterproof container in here. And I make photocopies of them. And where I can, I use the original, right? Because most of us, where do we keep the original? Like, you don't carry your passport all the time, so you keep it in a beautiful wooden credenza in the den. Right? That's going to burn to the ground. So, what is the difference in storing it in your beautiful wooden credenza or putting it in your go bag so that while you're pitching your 4-year-old out the window, your hubby's dragging your 500-pound bag into the front yard? So you've got all your stuff, your originals where you can. And if you can't, fine. A photocopy's better than nothing. Somebody suggested a thumb drive or a scan disk, that, you know, little memory card disk with everything on it, soft copy, and that is a great idea. However, I'm going to say if you don't know you're going to have access to a computer or a printer with which to extract it, then that's all you've got. It's just a nice little thumb drive that, you know, maybe looks like a turtle or a penguin or whatever, but you can't get your document off of it. I prefer to have originals, and if not, photocopies. And then if I wanted to have a tertiary event, I would get a thumb drive. So think about that. Also, if you're going to store it in the home and you're not going to put it in the bag and you have a den, your beautiful wooden credenza is going to burn down or flood out. So consider getting a fireproof or waterproof safe. And you can buy some very small ones. They're not very expensive at all. You can get a very small under the bed one for $20, $25. You can get some very large ones. But fireproof, waterproof, and more resistant than anything. If it was really, really bad, you might lose some stuff. But it will give it a layer of protection. So let's talk about access and functional needs. These are your persons with disabilities. So where I work now, we did an entire hour-and-a-half presentation on just how to plan and prepare for persons with disabilities. Because there's just a whole other variety of things that you think about for these people that you might not have to think about for yourself. We live in a world with beautiful technology that allows us to do all kinds of things. But one of the things that we might lose if we were to lose basic infrastructure, electricity, things, is some of that technology. So someone who may be completely autonomous, fully functioning in all levels on a sunny day may need some assistance in different ways that you're not used to if we had a catastrophe. So, and this can be a very delicate thing to try to discuss with individuals, but because it's born out of love and affection, hopefully, you know, if it's somebody that you care about, you have that kind of open relationship. But what you want to say is, let's look at what you use for your world the same way we're looking at ours. But look at their world in specific and say, now what if you didn't have this? What would we do instead? What if you didn't have this? What would we do instead? What is our workaround? I want you to think about persons with diabetes. If you need insulin and that has to be refrigerated and you don't have a generator and we lose electricity in this world for any amount of time at all, can you give that person a dose of diabetes medication? Right? Now, I don't have a generator in my community. Remember, I described that I could reach my cup of sugar from my neighbor by just simply leaning out my window. Right? So what does a generator in my community do for me? It announces to the world that I am ready. It announces to the world, because you might not know it, but generators are quite loud. Larger, louder. Okay? So a whole home generator, loud. Smaller generators are not as loud, but if your neighbor's house is 36 inches away, then loud enough to say, hey, look at me. And you're going to wonder, if I have a generator, if somebody has a generator, what else do they have? They may have something else. I want to go over there because I didn't prepare at all. What can they do for me? I'll tell you what I'll do for you in an emergency. Nothing. I only prepared for my family. I'm doing my piece by trying to get people to prepare as well. But I don't have enough for the whole world. So if you don't have a generator, but you need refrigeration for diabetes medication, you need to think outside the box. Now they make some very small generators that are solar powered and silent. They're very expensive. But if you started today and you set aside as much as you could for a period until you got there, eventually you'd be better off than you are today. Can you talk to your doctor? Some people take insulin and it's not refrigerated. Is that an option for you? Just what works for you. If you have someone who has to have oxygen or a ventilator or things such as that, breathing treatments because they have asthma, these are all medical issues that you have to think about in advance. Because we are going to assume that all the hospitals will be available, but guess how many other people are going there, right? But if you have anyone who lives in a nursing home type environment, you need to be asking that nursing home type environment what type of facility supplies are they going to provide in the event of disaster. Do they have a generator? How big is it? How much fuel do they have? How long can they run it? To what extent are they going to run it? And that means percentage. Because even if they have a generator, they're not going to run that building at 100% capacity the way they would on a normal day. You wouldn't do that. Because you're going to try to conserve that fuel. How often do they test it? And in what way do they test it? You want to be asking these questions because your loved ones live in that nursing home facility and you want them to be taken care of. And if you don't get the answers you want, and unfortunately you're in a financial position that that's the only facility that you can use, then you may want to begin to say to yourself, the first thing I'm going to do is go get them. And because they'd be better at my house just during this period of time than they would normally. They may be in the nursing home because you have to work every day. But if you're in a situation in a crisis where you're not going to work, they may be better with you. You have to decide what's best. Some of the other things, transportation issues, we talked about if there are mobility problems, can they evacuate from an upper floor or a basement? If you're going to have to leave your home on foot and do a lot of walking, and someone normally uses an electric wheelchair, then do you have a manual one? Because what if you can't recharge that battery? If you don't have a method to do that, do you have a backup manual one? Do you make crutches, things such as that? Just think outside the box. What can you do? Hearing and visual aids, as as we get new glasses, what do we do with the old ones? Do we donate them? That's wonderful, but maybe 1 year keep a pair, put it in your go kit. My brother was in the military, and they used to make fun of him because he had glasses everywhere he went. And guess what? Jay can't see without his glasses. So when they got into a firefight and one guy's glasses got broken, there he was asking my brother, can I borrow your extra pair of glasses? Might not be the same prescription, but Jay had some, he didn't. If you're in a crisis situation, you break your glasses, can you see? Do you have backups? If you have hearing aids, do you have extra batteries? Those are going to have a shelf life, pay attention to that. Infant care, if babies are grandbabies or anything like that, neighbors' babies are in your future, then think about infant care. Do you have cloth diapers? Because, I don't know how long Pampers are going to last. They're, one-time use only. So do you have some cloth diapers? And if it's just one pack. Formula. I want you to think about formula. So if nursing is your preferred method of nutrition for an infant, great, and I understand completely, and that's to be commended. However, in an emergency situation, if it were bad enough, you don't know what your nutritional intake will be over the long time. And the mother's nutritional intake dictates that of the baby. So I'm going to say in a very bad catastrophe, you want to have formula. And even further, you want to have liquid formula because you don't know what your water resources will be. And if you need to have formula and reconstitute with water, but you have impure or unclean water, now you're exposing the baby to all of that. So liquid formula, it has about a year to a year and a half shelf life, and you do have to pay attention to that. It's just one of the things. So I got in trouble one time with my federal agencies for mentioning feminine hygiene, but I challenge any of the ladies here to tell me that it's not extremely important to you, at least every once in a while. And men, if you think it's not important to you, hide her stash and see what happens when it gets important to her. It'll be important to you too. So I reject the notion that we don't talk about that. It is important. And if you go through my bag, you'll find my stash because I need that stuff. So the long-term stuff, by the way, ladies, you might want to think about getting the reusable sanitary pad, like a cloth diaper or washable and reusable. Would that be ideal? Well, no. But if it's a situation where it's all you had and it would last you forever because you can wash it, well, I would much prefer that. So let's talk about animals. In Katrina, we learned that people will stay at home and die rather than leave their animals. Okay? And I'm going to tell you that I have, and don't judge me here, okay? This is a judgment-free zone, but I have absolutely no attachment to radio whatsoever. I actually don't like it at all. I woke up one day and decided that maybe it was time to have a fourth baby. And once my husband pointed out to me that technically 2 days worth of all my things were packed in by the door and ready to go, and that no, hell no, he's not going to have another baby, I decided maybe a cat would fulfill that itch, right? That was a dumb idea, by the way. Not at all like a baby, a cat. But he's not my favorite little guy. But now I have a girlfriend who has some dogs, and I'll tell you what, she laid down her life with those dogs without even thinking. She didn't have to think about it. They are her babies. She doesn't have little people. She has those dogs, and I don't know what kind of dogs they are. Big dogs are like horses, but especially when I stand next to them. But those are her babies, and she would do anything to protect them, and that's fine. And I respect her. She respects that I love my little people, and she doesn't judge me about rodeo. But what I tell her is prepare for your dogs. I have a boss who's a very odd relationship with his bird, and if your bird is important to you, and your bird has perched in your shower and lays with you at night or whatever, I know it's weird, right? Then I'm going to say, prepare for your bird. So how do we prepare for animals? The same way you would for you. What are the animals' needs? What are the animals' vital records? So the animal has had shots, I hope. I don't know that they give bird shots or snake shots, but whatever. If they got any kind of vet records, have a copy of that. Put that in your vital records. You want to talk to the kennel where you normally board an animal and find out, do they have a business continuity plan? And by that I mean, when Hurricane Sandy knocks us all out, are they still going to be operating? If they're not, you want to find a kennel who does operate, because and you're going to need to board the animal. Because I'm going to tell you that FEMA shelters will not take your pet unless they are a vision or hearing impaired assistance animal. They're not going to tell. Because you can't have the cost that I need for my little person because you have a dog, right? So you want to find a place that will be operating in advance. Find out what they're going to charge. Find out if they have waiting lists. Can you sign up to get one? Because if they only have 22 cages and somebody gets there before you, you're short. Find out if you can sign up in advance. Ask them if you can sign up for an emergency operations plan and you want to be the first one to get your little fluffy furry guy or gal in there, and that's important to you. Negotiate the fee up front, because I'm going to tell you the same way we get gas on gasoline, you might get charged $800 a night for the cows will eat fire. So have extra dog food. If your animal needs medicine, my mother had a cat on dialysis, I swear to God. I didn't even know you could do that. I say that's one of those things that only someone in Texas would do, but I swear to God, she had a cat on dialysis. So I'm going to say in that situation, there was nothing we could have done for little Indy. We have to let her go. But if she has some medical, your animal has some medical needs, medicines or what have you, then have some extra ones. Be prepared. Because the fact is that we did find out from Katrina, they did a survey after the fact. 67% of respondents in an ASPCA survey said they would not leave home without their animal. And we saw people on the roofs of Katrina who would not accept a ride from the Coast Guard because the Coast Guard couldn't take $13. So, plan in advance. All right, I mentioned safety skills earlier, so let's talk about safety skills. How many people here know CPR? Okay. So, okay, good. Then people. So, you should all know CPR, although I know there's a cost involved, so let's talk about that. Check with your agencies. Even if you work in private industries, many of them offer training in CPR, and if they do, you need to go get that. There's no reason not to. My agency offers it for free now, but I've worked in others where you couldn't get it, so I have looked into the cost. Most of your local fire departments will, and I know your local chapter of American Red Cross will teach it on a pretty regular basis. Some of the fire departments, you can get it as inexpensive as $75 a course, and then you'll be certified for 2 years if it's an American Red Cross course. And Red Cross, it can be as much as $115, $120. But what you get in return, the capabilities for that, obviously can't be measured. I would hope that my life, if I were to fall out now and start to choke, was worth $115. So, now, if you had CPR training and the last time you had it was in 1978, I'm going to say, good for you for when you did it. But if I fall out, please do not huff and puff on me, okay? Don't touch me. Pray for me, sing to me, I like to be sung to. Give me some comfort, little affection. Don't huff and puff on me if you haven't done that in 30 years, okay? They update it and change it for a reason. Now, if it's been expired by 6 months, I'm not telling you to neglect the dying, okay? You know where your abilities lie, but be very honest with yourself about your capabilities. The giant fist bump on the chest, we don't do that anymore. So if that's what you remember doing, don't do that. So just think about it, try to stay cognizant of it. It really is life-saving all the time to have CPR. So try it. Think about your supply kit that we'll talk about in more detail in just a minute, but you want to have a first aid kit in there, and you want to be sure that you're rotating some supplies in your first aid kit, okay? That aspirin, I'm not sure if it's got a 20-year shelf life. If you've taken a 20-year-old aspirin and you happen to know what the side effects are, see me afterwards. I'd like to add that to my presentation. But I'm going to say that, like, for instance, ACE bandages, ladies, those are like your pantyhose, and you get up on Sunday morning to put those on, and they weren't the condition that you left them in. That elastic gets shot after a while, okay? So you might want to replace those later. They're just a cloth. If you have alcohol prep pads or alcohol swipes, those do not stay moist forever. If you are hoarding in your purse, ladies, any TGI Fridays rib wipes, and you have them 5 years ago, and you know you do because you get the ribs, and you're like, just use a napkin, and you take the wipes because you want them for your purse or the car. We all do it. It's okay. But they don't stay wet forever. So don't hoard them to the extent that they're not useful. Let somebody wipe their mouth once in a while with a wet wipe and check on them. If you got them in, 2002, they're not wet anymore. So, okay.
Can I add a footnote to the medicine?
What's that?
Can I add a footnote?
Oh, yes, please do.
It's really important to know if the medication that you're taking, if it just depletes in value, if it's no longer effective, the effectiveness goes down. But some medications actually are toxic, right?
And that's
so they
true.
hurt you. So it's good to know if you're taking a prescription medicine.
That's absolutely true. And we're going to talk in just a minute more about medications. And that's one of the points, is you have to know what it does to you. One, to not have it on a cold turkey basis. And two, if it's really old or expired, what does it do to you? Most of them are just not as potent, but some of them are actually quite harmful and will do not good things to you if you continue to take them. And you want to have that conversation with your physician or your pharmacist and be very specific about what medication and what dosages you're referring to. Okay, so emergency supply kits. So let's talk about go kits, okay? Types of kits. So I want you to think about two different scenarios. Remember before we said where do we spend most of our time, okay? So I spend most of my time at home and at work. Or, and if you're my husband, then also in the car because of the commute. Right? So let's just think about those three areas. But if you have another area where you spend a lot of time, consider that as well, just within your mind. Think about the situation where it's really bad outside, whatever that is, outside your home, outside your car, outside your building at work, and you need to just hunker down. This is like turtle mode, okay? You're going to suck down in your shell and just stay where you're at. Staying here is better than out there. And there's a number of situations that could cause that, from winter weather, which I'm going to say don't get out of your car if you're warm, or to radiological, biological event. If you have any kind of dirty bomb detonation where the air outside is not clean, you don't want to breathe that, bad stuff will happen to you, you want to stay inside. Okay? Now, if it's really bad inside because there's a house fire and it's 2 a.m. and I hope you sleep in pajamas because you have to run out, you know. So, then you want to run out. You're leaving the home, you're fleeing, you're on foot. This is your go kit. I'm going to run away. The kit for shelter in place can be a lot larger because if you're just hunkering down in your house, I mean, the limits of what you can store depend on the limits of storage in your home, right? And what we can afford to have on hand and rotate. We'll talk about shelf life and stuff. So you want to think about those are the types of kits. So you want to have a go kit and a shelter-in-place kit for work, for home, and for your car. So let's talk about time frames. How long should these be good for? Okay, so FEMA recommends at a minimum 3 days. So for your go kits, you want to have 3 days worth of stuff. And your stuff will be different than my stuff because your needs are different than mine. This is our 5 people, 3 days worth of stuff. Not really though, because I have another bag I didn't bring that has just water in it. Talk about water in it. And then I have a backpack at work under my desk that has just stuff. And then of course I have the diaper bag, purse, and stuff. But you want to have about 3 days. Now they like to see you have 7. That would be ideal. I'm going to tell you that we have a 30-day supply. And if I had my druthers, ideally I'd like to have a year. And if I were to win the lotto, now, have you seen Doomsday Brothers? Have you seen it? Yes? Okay. Well, when I win the lotto, I'm going to be the freak that starts digging holes and dropping pods in the ground and has ventilation. I'm doing all of it. But right up until the Johnsons win the lottery, which, you know, we've been talking about a lot and I've requested repeatedly, then I'm just going to have to keep doing my normal planning, and that is relegated to what I have stored in a stairwell in the basement. Because that's what I have room for, and that's what I've been able to afford. You have to do what works for you and build yourself up. Just because you can't go out and buy 30 days worth of supplies right now doesn't mean there's not things you can't do. So let's talk about what to put in the kits, okay? What should be in there? Water. Okay, so I'm going to tell you I don't like water. It's very unfulfilling to me. No taste, no bubbles, no refining properties that I love. But I do know and understand that I need it. And I've been told that the vast majority of my body is made up of water and I need to replenish that. So how much water does one need? FEMA will tell you that you need 1 gallon of water per person per day. So do the math. How many persons, include your little furry, fuzzy, feathery, scaly, whatever, dwellers, include them, how much water? I should look that up. I don't have the statistics on how much a dog would take. But again, is it the horse that my friend owns, or is it the little yabby dog that I seem to around the neighborhood? So we need 1 gallon per. So that's a lot of water, right? Where are you going to store all that? I want you to think about all the opportunities, okay? Think about the hazards that you'd be warning, okay? So winter storms. Most of our flash floods know what a thunderstorm, you know, when rain's coming in, and, you know, the derecho, maybe we could have predicted that. But you didn't know when the earthquake was coming, but we certainly knew Sandy was on her way. So what can we do in the moment? So this is water I'm not storing under the stairwell in the basement, but I can go fill every bathtub. We have 3 full bathrooms in the house, and then a half bath. I can fill every bathtub, I can fill every sink. Don't overlook your water heater. For us, we have a 40-gallon water heater, but it's magic because despite the fact that it says 40 gallons, I will tell you that it has never in its lifetime dispensed continuously 40 gallons of hot water. I think it must only hold 2. That's an issue for me and my family. I've yet to take a fully complete, check all my boxes of chores and cleanliness inside of 1 shower with all hot water, but that's just me. But would you want to drink out of that? Well, probably not. But you could, and if you got to the point where you were, starting to look at that creek out back, then it's probably better to go there first. Did you know you can flush a toilet if you fill the tank? I'm from the country. You can flush a toilet if you fill the tank. So pull the back off, fill it with your stored water.